Welcome to the last session on operating system and Linux. I'm Manibhushan D'Souza, and in the last session we are going to look at the system administration commands in Linux. Now before we venture into that, in the last video I've told you that we will look at the shell script functions, how to create a function. So I'll quickly spend 10 minutes on creating function, and then I will switch on to the Linux administration. So let me switch to the Fedora here. I have a Fedora now. Now you may ask, why sir you have Fedora? Because I have to show you something in between which requires a lot of memory. So I'm using this low memory footprint OS, and that is the Fedora. Now let's look at how we can create a function in shell scripting. Now I have this ex1 which is same, but this time it is there on the desktop itself. So I have it in my desktop. So let's see how to create a function. And you know very well, if you want to create a function, say hello as a function, so you know that to create a function you can say hello, and you can do that. You can also use a word function if at all you are really interested in. I'm not going to do it because it's going to take too much of time, and you know very well, a function, you start a curly bracket and you end a curly bracket, and in between you write some command. Let's say well hello, and let's say welcome to shell scripting. So let's say that, okay, you've done this. So this is the function. Okay, how do you invoke the function? Now just remember, how do you do it in your C program. So what you do in your C program? In your C program you might have written like double, okay, double, I will go out of screen now, sqrt, and you might have said int n, okay, and you might have done like this. And in the main program, how do you call it? In your main program you call the sqrt and then supply the actual number. Okay, this is how you do it. Okay, so this is the invocation, this is the function definition, okay, or declaration. This is the function invocation. The same thing I have done. I have declared the function, I have to invoke. I'm going to invoke in the same file. So I have come out of the function to invoke this function. Just say, not this one, just say hello, that's all. Okay, so you say the function, there is no need to put the open parenthesis. So let's run it. I will okay, where is the thing? Okay, shell, and I'm going to say ex1.sh. that's my command. I press enter. I think I'm not there in my desktop. Let me go to my desktop, okay, and then try it, because that file is there in my desktop. Okay, so if you notice that I'm there at my home folder but not in the desktop. Now I'm in the desktop. Okay, so because when I'm there in the desktop I can now get the command. I press enter, and what I got is say hello. Is my spelling proper? Is it not the shell? Sorry, how did I wrote that thing? Okay, yes, such, okay, and you know, sorry about that. This is, I wrote here shell. Okay, so yes, h followed by the file name, and you notice it's going to display this message. As simple as that. Now how to pass the parameter? Now to pass the parameter, you know, how do you call the square root function? So when you call the square root function, when you call the square root function, what did you do? You to call the square root, you say square root of 5. Okay, if you want to find the greatest among the thing, you say greatest number, some function, and 10 comma 5 something you wrote. So this is how you are supplying the actual arguments. Okay, so you are supplying the values. Now how do I supply the value? Now the first parameter that you are going to give, so for example when you have the square root function sqrt as the function, this value, first value that you are giving, or let's say you have this function called as max function. I am not sure whether you have seen this in your Excel. Okay, it's going to give you which is the maximum among these numbers. Okay, so the first parameter that you pass to the function will be stored in a special variable. I'm talking about my shell script, in a special variable called $1. The second parameter that you pass will be stored in a variable called $2 and so on and so forth. So whatever value you supply will be stored in the $1. So let me read that value just to get that thing. So I'm going to say the name, I'm going to read it as $1. There is no need for this program, but okay. I'm going to say hello dollar name. Remember, whatever I am supplying, I am storing it in the name variable here. So when I call it, there is no need to put the parenthesis like this. You can just say the name. So in your C program, you might have done like this. Okay, there is no need to put the parenthesis. I am going to just supply the name. Press enter. I'm sorry, I'm not here. Let me go to the shell now and let me run it. Okay, so did I wrote okay, I think money is already there. So let's say money, that variable is already there. Did I wrote okay. If you notice, I call this money and I'm supplying this money to the value here. So when I invoke this, what happens, when I invoke this particular function, you notice that this money, whatever I have written, money is passed to the function, to this one. Okay, and that is why it's going to print that hello money and so on and so forth. So if I write like this, money Bhushan, so what is the output? Can you guess what is the output if I do this? So it's going to give you the money only. What about Bhushan? You know very well this. Hope if you have listened to me, this part is the $1. What about this part? This part will be the $2. Hope you get that thing. Okay, so when you put this space in between, that is considered as the second parameter that you are passing. Okay, so this is simple as that. Now in your function you have something called as a return value. Okay, now there is also a function called as a return. Very important thing, this is not similar to your function, so extremely careful about it. Now I told you, if you have listened to me in the previous classes, I told you whenever you call a command, like if you call a command like cat, when this command executes successfully, it returns 0. If it is having some trouble in doing that, it returns a non-zero value. That is what is the meaning of saying return. Return always returns an integer value. It is not like your square root function. Finally, in your square root function, you return the square root value. It is not that. You are not returning the values. You are returning the return value. So when you want to tell, when you use this return, you are telling the operating system whether I successfully completed my operation or there is something wrong in the while performing my code. That is what is written. You are returning to the operating system, not to the user. So let's look at how I can write a simple function. And in your C program, what's a simple function that you have written? You have written a function. This is the most interesting and most heavily used function, and that is the square root. So I'm going to store the value n. I'm going to take the value n here. Remember, it's a very different way. You take the first parameter, okay, and I'm going to initialize count. Okay, you can use anything, count equal to 1 and f is equal to 1, let's say. And what you do, while, yes, any guess, while count is less than or equal to dollar number. Okay, do done. And what you do in this in between, what you do in between, so I'm going to just type it here. What you do, you increase the f is equal to, I'm using backquote. Again, backquote is near your escape key, not this is not a single quote that I used. Expression dollar, what is it, f is equal to f into I. So look at your if you forgot that thing, so how do you write in C program? How do you write? F is equal to f into I, is it not? And I plus plus, this is the thing that you are writing. Just remember your factorial function. So here I have to write it in a very different way. So let me go here and let me try that whole thing. So f is equal to f into, remember I can't use this star. Star means any character, it's a meta character. I have to escape that. Whenever you are using the star, escape it. Dollar count. Okay, so that's the first one. Then what's the next thing? Next thing is I have to say count is equal to count plus 1. So how do you do that? No spaces. Okay, expression again dollar count, count is equal to count plus 1. There is no need to escape here. So once your while loop is over, you just come here and then say echo. Let me put the echo the value of ef. So that's your function. Okay, that's simple as that. So let me call that function. How do you call this function? To call this function, you say fact of 3. Okay, so simple as that. Let's run it and let's see what is the value. So I'm going to run this now. Okay, 6. Hope you get that thing. Now if you want, I will make it a slightly beautiful way. Okay, so how do I say that? Echo, enter a number. This is what you generally do it, and read n. Okay, read a number, let's say, if you get confused. So then you say dollar number. So simple as that. Let's run it and enter a number 3, value is 6, enter a number 4, 24. Okay, now what if you want to return a value? How do you return a value? Remember, it is returning a value, but it is returning onto the, because you use the word echo, it's going to return it onto the screen. Now what if I want to store the value in a variable? So return value, you know, how do you call this square root function, or how do you call any function? So what you do here, so you say double x is equal to sqrt of 25. You do this one. So whatever the value that is returned, it is going to be stored in the x. In the same way, whatever the value is displayed returned, it is actually showing onto the screen. I want it to be stored on a variable. How do I do it? There is a small trick that you need to play, and that is it is going to return it. So I want to store it in a variable. Let's say I'm going to call this as fa, and I'm going to use dollar and this. So this is something strange here. Okay, so this will return the value. Whatever value that is written, it's going to be stored in the variable called fa. Now if I say echo, okay, factorial of, I think factorial of dollar number is dollar fa. What is this fa? By the way, fa is the value that is returned. Okay, so let's look at this one in action. So I'm going to just run it. So I'm going to justify, I'm going to say, I think I have not saved this one. Let me save it. Let me clear the clutter here. and press enter, and now let me try it. Okay, 5, value of factorial of 5 is 120. So this is how you use the factorial the functions in shell script. Now let's go back to the our work. So now let's see how to use the system administration. So system administration, you can use it for adding the user, for creating the group, deleting the user, and for deleting the group. Now you know very well Linux is a complex system. Many people are using that Linux, so there must be somebody who is going to maintain the entire system. So he is going to take a backup, he is going to copy, he is going to install a new software, he is going to add a new user, and so on and so forth. So there must be somebody who is going to do this work, and this particular person is called as super user. So she is going to perform all the operations of maintaining the entire Linux system. Now this system administrator is given a special login, and that login is called as a root. So whenever you log into the system as a general user, you are given a dollar prompt, but for a root generally it is the number sign. The prompt will change as the hash or the number sign. Okay, what are the things that the system administrator can do? System administrator can create or delete a file or a directory at anywhere they please. They have the full control. Okay, they can also read and write from your directory or your folder, whereas you cannot read and write to others folder. Like you can't access the data from others home folder. It's not possible. Whereas for the system administrator, everything is allowed. Okay, how do I become a super user? So if you are running on the single mode, that is if you are single mode means that is a single user mode means you have only system console with you. Okay, only the GUI, not the GUI, the terminal is system console. By default it has the super user privilege, whereas if you are the other way around, you can log in as a root, or if you have not logged in as a root, you can use a command called as su. In some operating system it is also called as sudo, sudo it is called as. In some system it is su. So su means substitute the user. So let me show that thing for you. So I am currently money at localhost. So if I type su, it's going to ask me the password of the super user. If I type the password properly, you will notice that this whole thing changed here. If you notice the thing over here, this prompt and compare my prompt. So my prompt is the bash prompt, and this prompt is the root prompt. So I am root now. From this point onwards, I am the root now. I can do anything. Now how to come out to money? Again, as usual, press escape or control D, and you're back to money, and you'll notice that I have come back to money. Remember, you must know the password, otherwise it's not possible. In my machine I know the password, that is why I am confidently doing that thing. Generally it may not be possible. Okay, most of the time the super user, see, we are also issuing the command like cat ls and so on and so forth. You have tried many commands. Now these commands are the user command, but for system administrator some privileged commands will be there. They are available in the esbin or user.esbin folder. So if you look at the Linux over here, and I'm going to go to the system, and I'm going to say file browser. Now in this file browser, let me zoom in for you if you are not able to see. So in this folder, this is my system root here. So that's a root here. Hope you know the file system now. So that's a root. Inside this root you will have the etc over here, and etc, and you have, if you scroll down, you will have a b c d h i j k l m n o p q r s. So where is the r and yes? Okay, so this etc user, not this is not the et, sorry, it is not this one, this is user, not this one. See, one thing is you have root esbin, This is a set of commands that you get it under root sbin. All these are actually the commands, okay, executable. If you see the properties of this, they are all executable files, okay, executable application, okay. The owner of this is root. Only root can use those files. Then you have this user, usr. Under user, okay, you have directly sbin. Also under the user also you will find a folder called as a sbin. These are also the user commands. These are actually commands, the executables, which only the administrator can use it. So these commands, only administrator have the privilege to use those commands. So let me go back to my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, now you can set it in the path of the user. It is generally set, or you can give the path whenever you issue the command. Okay, now let's look at how a Linux system boots on its own. So whenever a system boots, there is a small program called as a bootloader. The work of this bootloader is to load the OS into the main memory. So you know very well, your entire Windows is there in the hard disk. So when you start the machine, on your disk, this has to be there on a specific location on the disk. So on your disk, at a specific location, this location of the disk, I'm just giving you that location, it's not always this location. One location on the disk is reserved. No data can be written there. So for whether you like it or not, whether you're losing the data, you may say that I'm losing the disk, why should I keep it blank? I can copy my movie there. The system will not allow it. So it's a very small area on the disk. On every partition it will be there. In particular primary partition it will be there. There is a small program. So once your computer starts up, and you know very well there is something called as BIOS, beginning input output verification. So once the BIOS is over, the system simply goes to the first sector, and if there is a bootloader, it will simply load that bootloader into the memory and ask the CPU to execute that bootloader. The bootloader will load the kernel of the operating system. So if the disk does not have that bootloader, sometime when you start it, it says your computer may say that it is not a bootable disk. No bootable device a disk is found if your hard disk is corrupt or something. The reason is the system just goes to that folder, that particular sector, and it tries to read it. If the bootloader is not there, it simply says that I can't boot. So it is like the computer will do the initial, hardware will do the initial checking whether all its hardware, that is all its components are working or not. Once it ensures that all the hardware is working properly, it just goes to the bootloader and asks the bootloader, okay, I will load it into the memory. Now it is the control is given to you, you do whatever you want. After that I won't come in the picture. So once the bootloader loads it, it will load the kernel first, okay. And generally in older version of the Linux, there was something called as a Linux loader. This is not being used now. Grub is used. You have a different loader there. The things have changed. Okay, the olden Linux Lilo was there. Linux loader was there. So this is a bootloader that loads the kernel into the main memory, and this kernel is the first process to enter into the system. And you know that every process is given a ID, and because it's a kernel is the first process to enter into the memory, it's going to get the ID as 0. So its process ID is 0. Okay, what the kernel will do is it will do an initialization of its system by invoking all the routines which are there in the init. So it goes to etc init, and it calls that init process and says now it's a time you start the initialization of the operating system. So this is the second process to enter into the operating system. So naturally it's going to get the process ID as 1. Kernel will get it 0. Second one will get the ID as 1. Now this init will go to a etc and init tab file, and the first thing it will do is it has to show something on the terminal. So it tries to get the information about the terminals. Okay, once it gets the terminal and it starts all the processing, the first thing it will do is it will call get TTY, that is it's going to get a terminal so that it can communicate with the terminal. Once it is able to communicate with the terminal, so remember the entire during this process it will load all the required files. Once everything is done, it will go to get TTY, that is the terminal, and it's going to show a login prompt at that particular point, and then your system will boot. Now during the Linux system as it executes, there are different modes in which the operating system will work, and you know very well some modes are privileged one, some are non-privileged one. So if the run level is yes, that means it is running at single user mode. If the run level is 5, it is multi-user, and if it is 0, it's going to halt the system. If it is 4, it will start the X window, that is the GUI window for us. Okay, so for example, if you just say init 5 here, that means you're going to start it in the multi-user. Now what is single user? Single user mode means only system console is enabled, others will not be allowed there. Only this is used for system maintenance. When you don't want anybody else to interact, you want to go in a single user mode, that's it. In the multi-user mode means you are allowing everything, all the files are there, every disks are being mounted, and so on and so forth, everything will come. Okay, there is suppose if you are working in a single user mode, you can use tell init and 5. You know very well 5 is for multi-user, so this number is for multi-user. If we allow it for tell in 5, it's going to start up there. Okay, so let's look at that in action. That is why I have the other version of the Linux. I'm going to go here and I'm going to start a OS called as Mandrivium. Now this is directly loading from the disk, that is why it I selected that particular thing. So when you start it, okay, it's going to show you the Mandrivium. So let's look at that. Okay, I need to do this one because it is going to load from the CD. It is directly CD loading. So I'm going to reset my system to enable it to run from the disk. Okay, when it starts, I'm going to just press escape so that not this one. Let me press enter. Now it's going to load it. Now I press escape. Now you notice here it's going to check everything, and after some time it's going to start the init. Okay, well, after some time you will notice that detecting USB and so on, it detects everything. So the bootloader has loaded now. So once bootloader has loaded, you will notice that it actually starts the init. You can notice there over here init is started. Okay, now it will start loading the entire OS into the memory. So now it starts loading the thing. Now behind the scene it has started done, and if you notice over here it has gone to run level 5. Again, I'm not sure whether you will be able to see this on your screen, video screen, and you notice init entering run level 5. So in the behind the scene everything is done for you, so don't think that it is that is been done. Now I'm not going to boot this OS now because I'm running out of the memory. Sorry about that. Okay, so I will run out of the memory, so I will just close this one. Even if you power down, nothing is going to happen because it's running from it's a live CD. That's called as a live CD. So it just boots from here. It's not going to make any problem to the file system or anything. It's going to work fine. So let's go ahead with the next one. Now once you booted the system, the next thing that you would like to do is you want to shut down. So there is a command called as shutdown to shut the system down. So if you go over here, I'm not going to do that thing. So let's say ella by entering the password. So if you say shut down, okay, shut down, now means now, okay, I cannot shut down because I am user. So remember, the Linux is a multi-user system, and if this permission is given to this particular command for everybody, what I will do when I have to go at 5 o'clock, when I'm getting late, I will shut down and go. But what happens? Linux is a multi-user operating system. Many others are connected. I shut down the entire, they will lose their thing. Okay, so only root can do that thing. Root can try the shutdown, but you can try that command if you are a root. I will not try it because then I will to reboot the system and it's going to take time again in the video. Okay, so you can use a shutdown, and -h means after shutdown halt the system. That means shut down it. In normal, in a plain English, shut it down and close. -r means after shutdown reboot it. Now in the Windows you have the option shutdown restart. So this is restart. It will shut it down and restart the system. -k means it's just a warning, nothing happens. You get a warning saying that it's going to shut down. So you can also specify the time. For example, shutdown -h and 4:30. At 4:30 is going to shut down. Or you can say -r and 40 relative time. You can say that after 40 minutes shut down the system. Again, only administrator can do it. Others have no rights to shut down the system. It's a Unix system. It's not like Windows where single user is there. Because Unix is a multi-user system, these things has to be controlled by administrator. Okay, so it is always a better option to shut down the system, in particular the Linux system, before use the shutdown command before closing of the machine. So before you turn off the machine, like turn off the power, shut down. So even in the Windows, shut it down. Some of you are not doing that thing. You think that nothing is going to happen. You will corrupt the entire file system. In Linux in particular, there are something called as inodes. It copies them into the memory. It copies all the content into the memory and keeps them in the buffer. And what happens is the buffers are not flushed out regularly, because reading and writing is a slow process. So what Linux will do, or even Windows will do, it will copy some content into the memory. When you shut down, it will write back all the things at proper pace into the disk, so that entire thing, proper information is stored there. If you don't do that, what will happen is the changes which were there in the memory, that is RAM, will not be highlighted in the disk. Next time when you start the system, Windows or Linux both will say that the file system is corrupt. Do you want to repair the file system? And after that, your system may boot itself. That's if you are lucky enough, it will boot, or sometime it will fail altogether. So it's some people will blame Windows for that. It is not the problem of Windows. It is how the systems are designed. So you are using your mobile. How many times you have shut down the mobile? How many times have you removed the battery directly and made an experiment like that? You have not done this, but on your computer you are always doing that. You simply shut it down without allowing it to shut down. Now, when you are using mobile, you are so careful that you press the button the power button very hard, so that power off option will come. Then only you will remove the battery. Nowadays you can remove the battery, so they are intelligent enough. They know that if you give an option for a user to remove the battery, they will pull out the battery. So the entire thing is concealed, so you can't do anything. Anyhow, let's come back to the story over here. The thing is, if at all you want the system to boot properly, shut it down. Now sometimes what happens is there are chances that the system may crash. when the system crashes, what happens? Crashing is, you know very well, it just stops, or it simply reboots because of some or other reason. When such a thing happens, all the content which are there in the buffer, they are lost, and the system may go to an unstable state. So if you know that it's going to crash, so you can use the sync command. So if you use the sync command, what will happen is whatever which is there in the buffer will be flushed into the disk. So if the system has to crash down, you may save all the things that are there before the crash. Now it doesn't mean that Linux is going to crash or Windows is going to crash, unless and otherwise there is a driver issue. Most of the time this kind of crashes occur because the driver that is being used are not the proper one, or it is not the updated one. They do see all these drivers work at the kernel level, that is at the privileged mode, and if they crash, the operating system automatically crashes. As a user, if you are playing a video, if you are playing the game, even if the system crashes, the system can withstand that kind of crashes, because its a kernel is still alive. When the drivers crashes, the kernel itself is gone, then the chances of OS surviving is very less. Okay, so if you know that, you can use the sync. Now I told you that Linux is a multi-user operating system. You can add the user or you can remove the user. To add the user, there is a command called as user add. So if you specify user add and the name of the username is not Sharath M or Sharath Shetty or Basava Raja or something like that. It is not that name. Username is short name. So how you have email ID, one single word, in that kind of user ID you have to give. So you can use the user ID and to create the user using user add. It's the command that you can think of using. It's a small utility which is available now generally. Now today, because Linux is a GUI based OS, because there is a GUI is already available, you can go to system here, and then you have under administrator, I think I will go to the system tools, and where am I having this one? I think, and it is there in the administrator only, add user. Okay, add user. Okay, you have it under administrator, add add user. Okay, it's here. Last one, you can add the user, and you know very well it is asking for the root permission. Only root can add the user. I know the password of the root, that is why I am doing all this trick. So I can add the user. When I add the user, I have already added two user. When I add the user, I have to specify what is the username, what is the full path, that is a full name. Username is a short name, and the full name is, you know, you have created email ID, that means you know what is the difference, and password you know very well. Default shell, what is the default shell, whether are you going to use the bash shell or are you going to use the sh shell or no shell at all. So you can specify that. Default home directory, remember every user has their own folder home. If you have a group, you can specify the group ID. You can specify the user ID as well as group ID manually, or allow the Linux to create that for you. I can try the same thing can be done using user add. Okay, user add, I do that thing. Okay, oh, I need to be root here, so let me go for a super user, and I'm going to type the password, and let's say user add, and it's going to show me all the details of what you can do. There are a lot of details which are available, okay, which you can use it to create the user. Because of time restriction, I will not venture into that one. You can add the user by specifying the user ID, group ID, and comments, and the home directory, and the default login shell. You can specify that. Now you can also specify the initial password using password. Hope you know that thing. So password is used to if you want to change your password when you log in, just type passwd. It's going to ask you for the old password, and you can type the old password and the new password. You have to confirm the new password, and you can change the password. Same thing administrator can also do to change the password. Okay, all these information, the user information, the password will be stored in a three different folders. All of them are available under the folder is etc. So if you look at this one, if you go here, and I'm going to just start the file browser, and if you go to the etc folder here, where is that etc? Okay, under this etc folder, let me zoom in for you so that you can see what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to say first one, password. Let's say where is it? Okay, I got this. Okay, password. I'm going to just open this one. Now you notice that the first one is the username, and password is marked as X, and the user ID, group ID, and the default that is your home folder and default shell. All information will be there. If I slightly go down, I think my own will be there. Let me say, do I have, okay, money. See, you notice that money, and this is the password will not be shown here, and you have the user ID and group ID and the full name. This is my folder, that is home folder, and this is my shell that I have it here. Now shell is a bash, you know very well. So that's how the information will be there. For the student, it is 501 and so on and so forth, student name, and this is a home folder and all the information. Password will not be shown over here. Very important, one thing you will notice here is the group ID as well as the user ID is coming after 500. The reason is up to 499, 0 to 499, all the group ID or user ID are reserved for Linux. So it is a better not to try a user ID and group ID less than 499. Now what is this? If you ask this question, so what is that user ID, what is that group ID? It's just a number. How you have register number, it's a number. So system recognizes you using a number, and that is your user ID. Again, system recognizes the group, like you can create a BSc one group, BCA one group, and some other group you can create it. Now that group has a number. So like how you have register number, the group will also have a number. These numbers, so it's like your register number cannot be less than 500, because 0 to 499 is reserved by Linux. It is better you don't venture into that. Now this is regarding the password. You also have, let's go to the, quickly go to the other one. The other is if the shadow is enabled, you will also find a folder called as a shadow. Now the shadow by default will not be available to me, so let me try it, but still SHA. So let me zoom in for you so that you can see that file. Now you notice that it is marked as X, saying that I can't access it. Okay, I try to do it, I get an error message saying that you cannot open this because you don't have the permission. Why? Because I have logged in as Money. Remember, Money is an ordinary user, he is not a root, so he can't access it. So can I access it using my prompt? Now let me clear it. And you know very well I am root. Look at here, I am root. Okay, so you know that I am root. So I'm going to use gedit here. I'm going to use the gedit, same software I'm going to use here. It is there, etc, and it is shadow. Okay, that's it. Press enter. It's going to open the, oh, I think I don't have anything in the shadow. Did I wrote properly that file shadow? I think I don't want to close without saving. Let's see, I wrote the spelling, because I have to take tuition in English. I have to close that thing. Where is it gone now? Okay, I have to close that gedit, otherwise gedit is started inside me. Okay, so let me look at that. So what is etc? Did I wrote that etc? And where is that? Shadow is gone. Shadow. Okay, so that's it. Let me try one more time because I think I wrote a mistake there. Gedit /etc /shadow. So remember, if you write a wrong file location, it will create, it's an editor, you know very well, like VI. If you give a file name, it will create a file name for you, blank file for you. So I don't want that thing to happen. I want that shadow to be open. Okay, so I got it. So now if you view, I don't know whether you can zoom it. Can I zoom it? No, I don't think so. In that case, I will use the Windows zoom. Okay, you have the same thing over here. So group ID, let me go to money is there. Okay, so you have the password here encrypted. Okay, it is not shown. It is, your password is encrypted and shown. I think I have already told you what is encryption, and I use the tr command for encrypting. So this some kind of encryption is used. It is not tr encryption. It is some complicated encryption is used for doing that. That's a shadow. Also you have this etc group to see the group ID. So I don't know whether it is there. So let's go and let me try that thing. I'm going to just close this one and clear the clutter. Don't worry about that. That is nothing to do with the, I'm just starting the group, group. Okay, I'm going to just open that group. I have the permission for group, and you notice that do I have my name? My group should be there. Okay, student. Okay, money. So you know that group ID, and you know that. Okay, so you have that. So 3 files automatically created. So when you create add user, if you say add user, okay, if you say add user, all these 3 files are automatically created for me, and the details will be added in those 3 files. So they are going to come in the 3 files, and in the password you have already seen username, password, user ID, group ID, home directory, and the default shell will come. And you know very well, username a maximum of 8 characters, then you have the password which is marked as X, user ID and group ID. You can also write the comment if at all you please to do that, and you have the home directory on the user shell. Also you can also, the example that is being shown, in my case I have already shown you the example. There will be a corresponding file in the shadow as well as the group, etc group. Okay, shadow will have the name as well as encrypted password, and in the group you have the group name, password, group ID, and who belongs to that particular group. All the details will be there. Now once you create the user, you can delete the user by saying user del. I will not try that thing. If at all you want, you can try. In this video I'm not going to try because we are slightly lagging in the time, so you can try that thing. It will remove the it will delete the user. What is the meaning of saying deleting the user? Deleting the entry from the password file, from the shadow file, from the group file. However, very important thing, the files which are created by the user. Suppose when I joined BSc, I created all the files, my exercise, everything is there in my folder, my home directory. I complete BSc and go out. So administrator will delete my name. So only my names and my password, all these things are deleted from the shadow file, the group file, and all the profile files are deleted. But my exercise will be there. Those files which I have created as a user file which are created, those will be there. You have to manually delete it. As an administrator, they have to manually delete it. Same way you can add a group by saying group add, and you can add the group. I think in this that utility is not there. Let me go to the, where is this? Okay, I will go here and I'm going to say add user and group. Again I'm going to say root, and oh sorry, root is not the password. Okay, I can say add group, and you can say what is the name of the group, and you can specify what is the ID. 2 things you have to say to create a group. It's as simple as that. So the group is already there. You can also see the details. can you see the okay, I can see the properties. Okay, you can see the details here. What are the information? Remember, it's going to extract all the information from the files and it's going to show me. So username, full name, password, home directory, and the shell. Account information, if it is there, it's going to show. By the way, what is the meaning of saying account information is this will be there in the password file till how long this account is active. After that the account will expire automatically. It's like you have your ATM pin and other things, they will expire after some time, then you will have to renew it. Okay, if I enable the expiration, the a particular password will expire, so you can have that thing. You can even log the password if you don't want the user to log in. And then the groups which are there, so all the groups which are there, my group, my name must be also there in that, so it's already there. Okay, I'm in the primary. Then you can set the different groups to which the user belongs. Now let me go back to my PowerPoint and let's continue. So you can add the group. Also you can delete the group by saying group delete. It will delete the group. Okay, that's all for today. For your interest in Linux, thank you. And for today's class, if you want to refer more, you can always use Linux A Practical Approach by B. Mohammed Ibrahim. With this, we will conclude the topics on Linux and operating system. Thank you for your interest in this course. Thank you.